Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah share. We're holding a Mishnah Chelik Beis, and Mir Hashem, today we will do a nice piece of Daf Samach Beis Amud Aleph. It's going to be a little bit of a abbreviated shir, really due to the lateness of the hour. I'm first starting to record this fairly late tonight, but we're going to get in a shir, and Mir Hashem will do the complete Siman Kuf Samach Vav. So we really have finished Hilchos Netillas Yadayim. Siman Kuf Samach Vav really begins Hilchos B'tzias Hapas, but the first halacha of Hilchos B'tzias Hapas still really deals with Hilchos Netillas Yadayim. So here on Samach Beis Amud Aleph, Siman Kuf Samach Vav, Din Hafsaka Bein B'tzia L'Netila. This is really a halacha that we've already mentioned several times, which is the halacha of tekef l'netila seudah, that there is not supposed to be any hefsek really, or we're going to see here two shittas, but the concept of minimizing any hefsek between Netillas Yadayim and the hamoitzi that marks the beginning of the seudah. Now, why should we not have a hefsek between the Netillas Yadayim and the seudah? So the reason for that is really very easily understood. We're washing the Netillas Yadayim in preparation of the seudah. Here, all the way at the end of Hilchos Netillas Yadayim, or really after the end of Hilchos Netillas Yadayim, let's remember what Hilchos Netillas Yadayim is all about. It's a takanas chazal misham srach truma. The chazal wanted that everybody in Klal Yisrael should have to wash the Netillas Yadayim before being kaveh seudah al hapas, so that ultimately kaihanim would always wash their hands before being kaveh seudah al hapas. We want kaihanim to wash their hands before the kaveh seudah al hapas, because most of the pas of a kayin came from truma, and we don't want the kaihanim to cause hefsid truma. We don't want kaihanim to handle truma with unclean hands and ruin the truma, which would be a terrible thing. So in order to avoid srach truma, in order to protect truma, the Chazal created this takana of the Netillas Yadayim when we're kaveh seudah al hapas. Now, if you're going to wash the Netillas Yadayim, so what did Chazal say? They said stam yadayim, unwashed hands, have a din of a sheni l'tumah. Now, a sheni l'tumah would render truma puzzle. If you would touch truma with hands that had a din of a sheni, you would turn the truma into a shlishi, and now that truma would be considered truma tameya. So Chazal said, "Staim yadayim are shniyos l'tuma," so you need to wash Netillas Yadayim. Now that applies to stam yadayim. Stam yadayim are unwashed hands that there's no reason for us to say that they're clean. We would suspect that they are unclean, and therefore they're shniyos l'tuma. Now, you go ahead and you wash the Netillas Yadayim in preparation of the seudah, but then, if after you wash the Netillas Yadayim, you get busy and you're mesiach das from your hands essentially turn back into stam yadayim. So now you would have to wash the Netillas Yadayim over again. So we really don't want a hefsek between the netila and the seudah. How about once you're in the middle of the seudah? So the truth is, we already spoke about this. We already spoke about the need not to be mesiach das from your hands in the middle of the seudah. But there's also kind of an assumption that as long as you're involved in the seudah, you know you need yadayim nikiyos. So as long as you're involved in the seudah, to a certain extent where we trust that you have shmiras yadayim on your mind. But if you wash the Netillas Yadayim and then you don't start the seudah yet, and you get busy with something else, then you can be mesiach das from your hands, from shmiras yadayim, and then you might need a new netila. So now let's see what the Mechaber says here. Again, Siman Kuf Samach Vav, Samach Beis Amud Aleph, Din Hafsaka Bein B'tzian L'Netila, the halacha that governs any hefsek that takes place between b'tzia, between opening up the bread and serving the bread, eating the bread, L'Netila and Netillas Yadayim, Ubay Sif Echad, and here we have one sif. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, Yesh Oimrim, there is a shita that says, and this is brought down in the Torah in the name of the Rif, the Rif and the Rambam. So Yeshayim, there are those that say, She'ein tzarich lizayer melahafsik bein netila lahamoitzi. There are those that say that this is a non-issue. There are those that say that you don't have to be concerned when it comes to a hefsek between Netillas Yadayim and B'tzias Apas. Let's jump right into the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Aleph and see why the Rif and the Rambam would say this. Says the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Aleph, She'ein tzarich lizayer demada amrinan b'shas, because the Rif and the Rambam say that when the Gemara in Brachas on Nun Beis Amud Beis says tekef l'Netillas Yadayim seudah, this is a Gemara, we can't deny the Gemara. The Gemara says tekef l'Netillas Yadayim seudah, that the seudah has to come immediately following the Netillas Yadayim. But the Rif and the Rambam, Sfira Lahu, they hold Dahainu, that what that means is shalo yisasek beintayim, that you shouldn't get busy between the Netillas Yadayim and the seudah be'eze esek, with an asek, with something that's really going to get you busy, oy maisa, or doing something, ad sheyasiach daitoi, to the extent that it will cause hesek hadas, oy besicha harbe, or maybe getting busy with a lot of talking, de maybe lidei hesek hadas, which would cause hesek hadas. Afilu imayu b'divrei Torah, even if the speech that we're speaking about is divrei Torah. So the Rif and the Rambam say, when the Gemara in Bracha says tekef l'Netillas seudah, you have to understand what they meant. The Rif and the Rambam, of course, agree that a real hesek hadas from Shmiras Yadayim could zicha be a problem. But what the Rif and the Rambam are saying is, you have to understand what the Chazal meant when they said tekef l'Netillas seudah. When they said that, they meant that you have to avoid a real bona fide hefsek. What's a real bona fide hefsek? So in the words of the Mishnah Berurah here, eze asek, getting really busy with something, a maisa, or a real maisa, achi yasiach daitai, that will call a hesek hadas. A sicha harbe. Now, if you want to get an inkling of how the Chavetz Chaim understood this, and what the Chavetz Chaim considers to be an asek, or a maisa that could bring to hesek hadas, take a look at Sharet Tzion Ois Katan Aleph, where the Chavetz Chaim writes, Kigoyin limzoig asek kais bechamin. Like if you want to warm up a drink by adding hot water to it. Ditzarch dikduk, where you need precision, shalo yechaser v'shalo yoiser, that you shouldn't add too little water or add too much water, v'chol ki yoitze b'zeh, or anything similar to that. And he brings this down from a Taisus and Psachim and Av Kovav Amud Beis. So I'll give you what I think would be a contemporary example. Okay, let's say it's by the Shabbos seudah, and people go to the kitchen to wash Netillas Yadayim. So let's say Daddy washes Netillas Yadayim first, and then Mommy washes Netillas Yadayim, and now you have guests and kids that are washing Netillas Yadayim. So Mommy says, I washed Netillas Yadayim already, but we have to wait for everybody else to wash Netillas Yadayim, so I'll mix up a salad dressing. From the words of the Sharet Tzion over here, you're mixing up a salad dressing, you got to follow the recipe, and you have to know how much oil to add, and how much vinegar to add, and how much black pepper. Of course, you're not measuring because it's Shabbos, but you need the ingredient list at least, and you have to know, I have to add oil and vinegar and lemon juice and black pepper and garlic salt. I'm giving you a whole menu here. And maybe some mustard seed. Ooh, it sounds good. So now you have somebody who washed Netillas Yadayim who's getting busy with an asek, right? I'm taking that from the Sharet Tzion. The Sharet Tzion says what's called an asek, what's called a maisa that could bring to hesek hadas, kegoin limzoig ezek kais bechamin, ditzarch diktuk shelo yechaser v'shelo yoiser. It's something that you need to pay attention to. You need to pay attention to what you're doing. So the Rif in the Rambam, which is the first sheet over here in Siman Kuf Zabak Vav, which is the Kuladika opinion, they hold, do you really have to be concerned with a hefsek between Netila and Berchas HaMaitzi? No, you don't have to be so careful. Ain't tzarich lizar milahafsik bein netila lahamoitzi. Now, if you just read the Mechaber, it sounds like the Rif and the Rambam say, nah, do what you want. You don't have to worry about any hefsek between Netillas Yadayim and Hamaitzi. But you see here for the Mishnah Berurah, no, that the concept of a hefsek being a problem between Netillas Yadayim and the Berachas Hamaitzi is a chazal. It's a Gemara in Brachas. On the Beis. The Rif and the Rambam don't deny that chazal. What the Rif and the Rambam say is you have to have the proper perspective on that chazal. They say that chazal means what I'm calling a bona fide hefsek, like mixing up a salad dressing. That's a maisa, that's an asik that could bring to esakadas. Going back into the words of the Mishnah Berurah, right by the ice cotton base for the Sharit Tzion, oy besicha harbe, or maybe like sitting around the table and getting involved in a whole conversation. That may be the esakadas. That could bring to esakadas. That would be a problem. Afilu mahayu b'divrei Torah. Aval, however, im yoshev bottle. But if you washed Netillas Yadayim and now you're sitting around the dining room table waiting for people and you're not doing anything, you yoshev bottle. Ve'ena oisa bein time shamaisa, and you're not doing anything. You're not doing any maisim between Netillas Yadayim and Hamaitzi. Av sheshaya harbe. Even if you wait for a long time, or even if you talk a little bit, ein lachush. That you don't have to worry about. Since the table is set in front of you for the seudah, and you intend on eating the seudah right away, you're not going to be mesiach das. So again, to wrap up the Rif and the Rambam, the Shitas Rif the Rambam is, of course, there's such a thing as a problematic hefsek between Netillas Yadayim and Berachas Hamaitzi. But what is that problematic hefsek? The problematic hefsek is a hefsek of hesek hadas. What kind of hefsek is going to cause a hesek hadas? A whole long conversation, mixing up a recipe. That could be a problem. But waiting, even if you wait for a few minutes, that's not going to be a hefsek. Talking just a couple of words, not getting involved in the whole conversation, that's not going to cause a hefsek. Why not? Because what are you doing? You're sitting by the table with the challah in front of you, getting ready to eat a seudah. So you understand. You washed the Netillas Yadayim, and now you can have a seudah. You're not going to be mesiach das. That's the shita of the Rif, the Rambam. That's the first shita over here in Sif Aleph, and that's the kula de kashita. Now let's go back into the Mechaber. Then we have another shita, and this is the Torah quoting the Yerushalmi. So obviously this predates the Rambam and the Rif. This is a Gemara. It's a Yerushalmi, not a Bavli, but it's a Gemara. It's Amoraim. And there are those that say that shetzarich li zoher, that you do have to be concerned with a hefsek. Let's take a look at Mishnah Berurah's cut bays. What kind of hefsek? Even just waiting, even just delaying the hamaitzi for a significant amount of time after the Netillas Yadayim, even that could be a cause for concern. Kidel kamei, like we're going to see shortly in the Ramah. Certainly, you should not speak. You shouldn't be mafsek b'dibur between the Netillas Yadayim and the Hamaitzi, according to this Yerushalmi. Afilu sicha muetes, even just a little bit of talking. What's a sicha muetes? Take a look at the Dirshu, footnote number 1. Ubegeder sicha muetes. As far as what constitutes a sicha muetes, Kasav l'kaban, the Mishnah Berurah is going to write later, Leinian hefsek bein bracha la'achila, when it comes to the question of being mafsek between a bracha rishayna, and eating, shafilu teva achas evi hefsek. Even one word constitutes a hefsek. So again, says the Mishnah Berurah here is cut bays, according to the Yerushalmi, that's a machmir. What's a hefsek? Afilu b'shihiyah l'chud kidol kamei, even just a delay. Certainly, you shouldn't be mafsik b'dibur, even with one word. The Yerushalmi holds that even speaking in divrei Torah is a hefsek. V'tzarich lizayir, and you have to be concerned. You have to be careful. Levad me'advarim shem l'tzarich seudah. The exception is anything that you need to say that's a tzarich seudah. Domutar lahafsik l'kul yalma. That everybody would be maskim. You could be mafsik. So if you want to make the hamaitzi and the challah and there's no salt, you could say, you don't have to say melach, you don't have to say, no, melach. No, you could say, excuse me, could you please bring the salt? That's not a hefsek, even though it's dibur. Excuse me, could you please bring the salt? It's a whole 8 words. It's not a hefsek. Why? Because it's tzarchi seudah. So we have the shita of the Rif and the Rambam, who hold that the only problematic hefsek between Netillas Yadayim and Hamaitzi is a significant hefsek. Sicha harbe, getting involved in a significant conversation, or getting involved in an asik or a maisa that could bring to Hadas. But then we have the sheet of the Yerushalmi that says even a small hefsek, what's called a small hefsek? A delay, a significant delay. How much is a significant delay? We'll see from the Ramah. But even a significant delay, or even only saying one word, constitutes a problematic hefsek. Okay, now, I did make a note here of Dirshu footnote number 2, which just brings down something very lamaisa. If you go to the second paragraph of Dirshu footnote number 2, what happens if you wash and you make a Netillas Yadayim, you go sit down by the table, and in the meantime you hear everybody else making the bracha, checking the shanim b'mitzvayis of tzivanu al Netillas Yadayim. Are you allowed to answer amen? Yes, you are. He brings down here, kasav akitzer shulchan aruch shemutar lo lades amen. You're allowed to answer amen to the bracha of al Netillas Yadayim. Okay, how do we paskin? Well, second line here in the Mechaber says the Mechaber v'toiv li zahir. And it would be proper to be careful with the sheet of the Yerushalmi. It would be proper to be machmir and do like the Yerushalmi and not be mafsik between the Netillas Yadayim and the Hamaitzi, even with a very small hefsek. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Gimel v'toiv li zahir. Kasva Asfar b'shem HaZayar HaKadosh. The Sfar quote the Zayar. Mitzvah la'adam sheyispal b'chol yom. It's a mitzvah that a person should daven every day al mizaynoi, for his food, kaidam ha'achila, before he sits down to eat. The Zayar says, before you sit down to eat, be mispal. The Rebbe should give you food. Ve'im shachach lehispalel ad akashanatol yadav la'achila. Now, what happens if you have that minig to be mispal for your food before the seudah, and you forgot to recite that tefillah until after you washed the Netillas Yadayim? Yesh mitzadedim, there are those that take the position sheyachal loymar tefillah zu achar hanetila, that you're allowed to recite this tefillah after the Netillas Yadayim before the hamaitzi, the loy choshev hefsek, because it does not constitute a hefsek deviktzas kitzarich seudah, because that's a little bit tzarich seudah. It's you're being mispal for your food. It's tzarchi seudah. Now, the Mishnah Berurah is very fascinating. The Mishnah Berurah brings down this farm that quote the Zayar. He doesn't say what the tefillah is. It doesn't say over here what exactly that tefillah is. Now, the Shla does bring down some tefillahs based on this Zayar. Ayin Sham in the Shla if you want to see it. What the Mishnah Berurah does bring down in the brackets over here is, he says, V'yesh shenagu, there are those that have the minig, lechatchila, loymar mizmar Hashem roi, to say kapitel chav gimel from Tehillim, mizmar David Hashem roi lo yachzar b'neistesha yarbitzeni, al mei menucha is yaleinu, v'chulei, bein netila lahamaitzi. There are those that have the minig lechatchila to insert mizmar David Hashem roi lo yachzar between the Netillas Yadayim and the hamaitzi. But the Mishnah Berurah says, the Yaiser Nachain, it is more proper that they shouldn't say this until after the Hamaitzi, v'chein kasav el Yerabba b'shem shla. Now, very interesting, in Dirshu footnote number 4, he brings down here from a tshuva in the Igris, from the Yeshiva Zatzal, he brings down here, Avaloymar eze tefillah mehalev, but somebody wants to say his own tefillah. He composed a tefillah in his mind, Latzlacha b'chol drachav, asking the Rebbeinu Shalom that he should have hatzlacha. If you look in the tshuva over there, in the Igris, it's a very interesting little tshuva. The Yeshiva Zatzal is talking, it seems, about somebody, let's say it's by a journal dinner. A yeshiva is making a dinner, and somebody wants to be mispal that they should have a lot of hatzlacha by the dinner. They should raise a lot of money. It's 100% usher to make up your own tefillah and to recite some kind of a tefillah between Netillas Yadayim and Hamaitzi. Even if it is asking for food and it's a properly formatted tefillah, hefsek. That's definitely a hefsek. You don't make up your own tefillahs and start inserting them between the Netillas Yadayim and Hamaitzi. And the real piece that I wanted to get to from this tshuva is what he says now. If a person does this in a steady fashion, a person makes up a tefillah of his own that he wants to say on his food. He wants to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom for food before he eats, and he wants to insert it between the Netillas Yadayim and Hamaitzi, and it's his own tefillah. And he's very makbid on saying that tefillah. He does it b'derech kva, he does it all the time, v'ikuv, and he makes it li'ikuva. She'ena oichel b'loizeh. He never eats without saying that tefillah. Says the Yeshiva Zatzal, Harei moisif al hachiyuvim shechayvu oisanu chazal. What this person is doing is 1,000% wrong. He's creating a new halacha. We don't make new halachas, Rabbi say. Chazal told us we have to make a bracha rishona before we eat. This guy's coming along and making up his own tefillah, and he's being makbid that he doesn't eat without saying his own tefillah. He's creating new chiyuvim. He's creating new halachas. We have an isser for that. It is a lav daraisa. It's called bal toisif. Umistaber sheyesh bazeh gam isser bal toisif. That would be an isser bal toisif. Rabbi say this is a common problem nowadays, unfortunately. You should know. We don't make up new halachas. We live by the Shulchan Aruch. We don't make up our own minhagim and our own halachas and give them the status of halacha. There's no such thing. We live by Shulchan Aruch, by Ramah, by Paiskim, by the Piskei halachas that we have from Dairei Dairis. We don't make up new things. To protect against that, the Rebbeinu Shalom put an Issa Daraisa, Bal Tosef. And if you want to know what happens when you're over on Bal Tosef, learn Parshas Bereshis, what happened when Chava said, if I touch the Eitz Hadas, I'll die. And the Nachash pushed her into the tree, and she saw that she didn't die, and from that, we ended up eating from the Eitz Hadas. We don't make new halachas. We live by Shulchan Aruch, Ramah, and Paiskim. Okay. Now let's go into the Ramah. Says the Ramah here, second line down, Samach Beis Amud Aleph. So, we have the Mechaber told us that V'toiv Lizair, it would be good to comport ourselves according to the Mohammedik opinion of the Yerushalmi, and not to make any hefsek between Netillas Yadayim and Hamaitzi. Says the Ramah, V'im shah k'dei hiluch eser v'shtayim amma. If you delayed the Hamaitzi more than the time it takes to walk 22 amas. What's 22 amas? About 40 feet, 38 feet, 40 feet, somewhere around there. How long does it take to walk? Berurah 40 feet. How long does it take to walk? I don't know. Less than a minute, probably. So, v'im shah k'dei hiluch eser v'shtayim amma, mikri hefsek. The Ramah says that's called a hefsek. What does it mean that that's called a hefsek? That means that you didn't do the Yerushalmi. If you want to really be Mekayim the Yerushalmi and not have a hefsek, you can't have a hefsek of the amount of time it takes to walk approximately 40 feet. Says the Mishnah Berurah. When does the clock start running? The clock doesn't start running when you finish making the bracha on Netillas Yadayim. The clock starts running when you dry your hands. That's when the clock starts running. Why? I guess because that's when the time starts that hefsek hadas becomes a problem. Once you dried your hand, now your hands are tar, but now hefsek hadas becomes a problem. If you mesiach das, your hands could become stam yadayim again. So that's when the clock starts running. The amount of time it takes to walk approximately 40 feet is already enough time that's called a hefsek, even if you're not involved in anything, even if you're not talking, even if you're not mixing up recipes, you're just sitting in your chair. That already could be an amount of time that's called a hefsek. If you leave the house and go to a different house, there are those that are makpid even on a shorter hefsek because you left the house. It's mashma from the Achrayim, says the Chavetz Chaim, that when there's no tzarech, you shouldn't have a hefsek at all. You shouldn't wait between the Netillas Yadayim and the Hamaitzi at all if there's no tzarech to wait. Preferably, you should wash your hands, Netillas Yadayim, dry your hands, and immediately make Hamaitzi. Ice cut vav mikri hefsek. More than the amount of time it takes to walk 22 feet is called a hefsek. V'loy mikri tekef. If you waited more than that amount of time, then already you weren't mekayim tekef l'netillas seudah. You didn't do the Yerushalmi. V'im kain. If so, l'fi masha pasuk ha-mechaber, that according to the psak of the mechaber, the tov lizar, that it would be good to be careful, litkaif netillas seudah, to be mekayim tekef the netillas seudah, yesh lizar gam elishas beitayim shir kazeh. That lechatchila, a person should be careful not to wait that amount of time between the niguv yadayim and the hamaitzi. But, says the Chavetz Chaim v'dan, you should know, the ikar din tekifa hamuskar b'siman zeh, this concept, this halacha that we're learning about, of tekef l'netillas seudah, hurak mitzvah lechatchila. It's only a lechatchila. Aval b'di'eved, afilu shah harbe, even if you waited a long time between the Netillas Yadayim and the hamaitzi. I hefsek beintayim, or you made a hefsek, you talked. Ain't sarach lachsev elital yadav, you do not have to go wash again. Kol shali yisiach daitay beintayim mishmeres yadav, as long as you weren't mesiach das, you don't have to wash again. Now, I've seen those that are very concerned. You go to a chassid hall, and some chassid halls, especially by the non-Jewish halls that were not built and designed with concern for halacha, you go to a Yiddish hall nowadays, so it's a davar pashut that on one side of the room there's a whole bank of sinks. You go to a Hilton ballroom, there's no big bank of sinks against one wall of the ballroom. So what do? They set up a washing station outside with those big things of water, with a spigot and with a basin to wash into. Now, what happens if you go out to the washing station and you wash, and you're at table number 1 all the way in the front of the ballroom? It's more than 22 amas until you get to your table. So automatically, there's a hefsek of more than 22 amas from the time you wash until the time that you make hamaitzi. So, I mean, the Mechaber says, v'toiv lizar, it's proper to be nizar like the Yerushalmi, not to have such a hefsek, even though it's only a hefsek of Shia. So there are those that are very concerned with this, and they say that you should wash and don't dry your hands. Wash, keep your hands wet, take a towel with you, start walking, and when you get within 22 amas of your seat, make al Netillas Yadayim and dry your hands. So now you don't have the hefsek of 22 amas. I don't hear it. And the reason I don't hear it is because what did the Mishnah Berurah tell me? The Mishnah Berurah said in Ice Cotton Bays. The Mishnah Berurah said, and he was going on the Yerushalmi, on the Shittas Yerushalmi. He's going on the Yesh Omrim. And he says, levad me'advarim shehem l'tzarich seudah, demutar lahafsek l'kuli alma. You're allowed to be mafsek even b'dibur for tzarchei seudah. You're allowed to say bring the salt. You're allowed to say I need a knife because it's tzarchei seudah. Walking to your table, eilachat tzarich seudah gedolah mizu. You can't make the hamaitzi until you're sitting by the table by the bilkala. So I'm shtoni in a shaila. That's tzarchei seudah. Eilachat tzarchei seudah gedolah mizu. That's what I think. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time here in Hashem with Siman Kuf Sabach Zion. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This list of limud HaTorah should be made in God's Klal Yisrael. Baruch Hashem should send Yeshua's refuahs, parnasit shtuchim to all those in need, and Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanasunim Batzaru Ba'ashivya, Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha, Ha'makib Yerachim Aleim, V'yitziyim Mitzara L'Rvacha Me'afela L'Oiro Mishibud L'Geula, Hashta Ba'gala Uzman Kariv, V'naimar Amen. Be well.